Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Cherry Beckert's latest technology podcast. My name is Jim Holman, and I'm joined by my colleague, Steve Holliday. We're directors in Cherry Beckert's digital advisory practice, specifically focused on digital transformation. And we're pleased to round out this series talking about the year of efficiency.
Yeah, this is essentially what we focus on day in and day out, which is to help organizations transform their businesses and services, ultimately creating efficiencies among people, process, technology, and culture.
Right. So you may have heard it. It's the year of efficiency. As technology companies seek solutions that save on costs, drive faster innovation, and better manage processes. So Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook Meta, declared that 2023, the year of efficiency. The goal is going to be to cut costs, shake up company culture, and narrow focus in response to slower growth in the tech industry. So Zuckerberg said the year of efficiency is about two goals: becoming a stronger technology company and improving financial results so that they can invest in the long-term roadmap. So subsequent to this, Meta said its revenue rose 11% to $32 billion in its second quarter compared to the same period last year. So Steve, what's the relationship between cost-saving measures and innovation?
Well, if you look at Meta here, cost-saving measures can fuel innovation. They free up financial resources to be used for research and development and allow for more experimentation. They enable investment in key areas of innovation, and they encourage lean thinking, which focuses on value creation and waste elimination.
So how can operational teams contribute to innovation through cost savings? It seems like chasing pennies.
Well, operational teams, they'll rally around the cost savings, especially when those savings are funding the future of the business. By cutting unnecessary expenses, the business is able to redirect those resources towards innovation, which fosters a culture of creativity and growth.
And we'll catch up on the culture of creativity in just a moment. That's very interesting. So, Steve, how does streamlining processes enhance collaboration and innovation?
When you streamline processes, you're reducing bureaucracy, which enables quicker decision making. That in turn allows for a more rapid development of innovative ideas. Simplifying workflows fosters more collaboration between teams and leading to a more cohesive and innovative approach to problem solving.
Okay, well, then what's the role of lean development processes and innovation? I know that you're within Cherry Beckert, one of our subject matter experts, continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma. So what are your thoughts on the role of lean development within innovation?
Sure. Well, lean development processes focus on customer value or value creation. And that's done a lot of times through this concept of a minimum viable product. They're really trying to understand, how do we get to this product level that is minimally acceptable in the marketplace. So it's usually a quick time to value. And then there's innovation on top of that is responsive to user stories and changing business conditions, so that what's gone today, or many technology companies are using agile approaches to development, not the waterfall development that we saw, where projects can take a ton of time, needs in the marketplace shift, and by the time the projects are done, maybe they're off the mark. So these lean approaches to product development are more responsive to changes in the marketplace, as well as getting products out and getting cash recognized faster.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because the rest of the business world really picked up agile, although lean has been in industrial forever. But the whole agile versus waterfall, it's interesting because that came from technology. That was a software development concept of how do we get the concept of minimum viable product, which is just good enough, which seems really contrary. But I appreciate what you're saying, because by going with a minimum viable product, a smaller approach, you have more elbow room, more time, more freedom to innovate and be creative. That's a very interesting approach. How would you say, Steve, that efficient resource allocation can lead to focused innovation?
Well, efficient resource allocation really ensures that resources are directed towards the most promising areas of innovation. This allows for more focused and impactful creativity. It also enables more calculated risks in experimentation without jeopardizing overall stability.
Okay, well, we always want real world examples. Can you provide an example of a company that leverages this efficient resource allocation for creativity?
Sure. Yeah, Google is a great example. They allow developers 20% of their time for creative thinking and experimentation. From that 20%, they use those ideas, those concepts, they incubate them for more formalized development. The right mindset, culture, and tools can help teams, especially distributed teams, to reliably produce a breakthrough that advances the business.
It'll be interesting to see because being able to innovate and create from a technology company has a much lower cost than it is to say someone who is in research and development in the automotive field to go innovate in the factory somewhere. This wouldn't be the first time that technology, which is what we're talking about today, can potentially be a lead for industry as well. So when we're looking at examples, real world examples of technology companies, how has Amazon leveraged efficiency for innovation?
Yeah, well, so when we think about Amazon, we think about super efficient logistics and inventory management. But when you think about how they've grown through leveraging that core competency, it's really allowed them to invest in other areas for innovation, like you heard about drone delivery and AI-driven customer service, for example.
Right. So earlier we talked about value creation and how that's so essential within lean principles. How does focusing on value creation contribute to innovation?
Well, focusing on value creation encourages the lean approach. You're eliminating waste and you're leading to more innovative solutions, such as simple and low-cost solutions that are transferable globally. I think one of the places where U.S. industry learned, and I'm looking back, 10, 15 years in my archives here, but working for large multinational companies with complex engineered products, for example, trying to sell U.S. designs globally wasn't always the best fit. And what we found in some markets was a simpler way of doing things, maybe not as much built-in complexity and waste that some of our products. And I'm thinking in the power transmission world, I'm thinking cars, I'm thinking medical devices, where really getting ideas from across the globe taught us, I think, a more lean approach to product development and things that were essential to be able to meet customer needs.
Well, we've heard the concept of that you've introduced, which is about being able to dedicate time to innovation. That really you can only do that by getting the elbow room that say lean principles or skinny down processes that can enable you to innovate. Can you talk about how can a streamlined process help in what they'll call failing fast? And maybe you can define what failing fast is.
Sure, you hear failing fast is talked about a bit, and specifically in the product development world. If you don't have good control in your development processes, you spend money developing ideas that maybe should have been killed a long time ago because they didn't meet certain hurdles or they didn't have the same promise that other ideas might have. So by failing fast, you're actually you're better off because you're allowing your resources to focus on those ideas that have the higher probability of success. And so in that case, when we think about lean and waste elimination, those ideas that are unpromising, if you continue to invest in them, that ends up as waste. And so by driving some degree of structure into your development processes where you have that discipline, I think that's the important part. It's really having the discipline to kill bad ideas.
Yeah, it's not intuitive when, the traditional mindset would be, well, don't fail. What are you talking about failing fast? In reality, it's being, how do you pressure test those ideas? How do you simulate something in a lab environment so that you know whether something's going to work or not? And a process and a data-driven culture that technology companies are really bringing to the forefront allows very rapid idea testing and innovation. And something that we hadn't really seen before is really different areas within an organization cooperating and collaborating together. Can you talk a little about how cross-functional collaboration might contribute to innovation?
Absolutely. I mean, cross-functional collaboration really, breaks down silos and encourages diverse thinking, which in turn leads to more creative solutions. And I think about those parts of the business and what they see from the customer interaction and the knowledge they gain. They may have certain feedback coming from the customer, or they may see certain complaints or returns that get analyzed, so they have inputs that are valuable too. You may, in the manufacturing world, you may have design for manufacturability, where design engineers are creating something that is very difficult to manufacture. And by getting all of these groups collaborating, which a lean and efficient process does, then you're really more efficient. You're driving better results, and you're getting a stronger innovation process.
So some of the examples within the tech space that you've talked about, like we talked a little bit about, Google mentioned briefly, but really it was about the Meta kickoff. So those are more, we'll say, are the newer tech companies, but we don't want to lose focus on one of the classics, big iron, big blue, IBM, right? That also a lot of the classic technology companies have had to reinvent themselves and to look at different things, to look at things in a little more of a modern approach. Can you talk about how IBM has focused perhaps on process efficiency, and how has that led to innovation for them?
So, I mean, innovate or die, really. I mean, I think about IBM's business model. And so in terms of their work to reposition themselves and introduce new technologies, really is the innovations in cloud computing and quantum computing. We don't know a lot about that today, but quantum computing is on the horizon and will definitely transform our computing world. But it's positioned the company as a leader in these emerging technology fields.
Right. So when you're talking about emerging technology, we talked earlier about process improvement, freeing up resources and changing cultures to allow innovation. Essentially, when you innovate and you potentially are going to fail fast, the alternative is failing slowly, which of course is going to raise the shackles of anybody that's risk focused. So what's the role of risk management in fostering creativity and experimentation, knowing that there may be a counterbalance that's traditionally expected from a risk approach?
Absolutely, and I think of risk management, the role of risk management in an organization, they're the bumper guards. They help keep things moving in a direction that is valuable to the business. And so risk management through process for innovation and checkpoints are really important to be sure that those guardrails are in place where the company is taking calculated risks in creativity without jeopardizing stability.
Okay, that makes sense. And as we're looking at things like cost savings, risk management, there's the process of efficiency for the pure sake of cost control. So you can be efficient and not be interested in innovation. You could drive every bit of waste and cost out of your supply chain, out of your business, out of your technology R&D development process. But can you tell us about how efficiency can act as a catalyst for innovation?
Well, I mean, there's no question efficiency and cost saving, process streamlining, and resource allocation does act as a catalyst for innovation. I think about the habits, really. When you're faced with a challenge of improvement, you really, at some point, you're going to hit a wall in the things that you know. And you really need to be more innovative in order to break through that wall. And so whether it's by collaboration, eliminating waste in other places, but also building then this continued improvement focus and allowing for the calculated risks that are needed in creativity and experimentation.
Well, when we talk about crashing through the wall, Meta certainly didn't restructure because they were too successful. So obviously had a bit of a reinvent moment. Can you talk about how Meta's restructuring impacted their financial results?
Well, so it did have an impact. They laid off 21,000 employees and incurred costs of between $3 to $5 billion, aimed at cutting expenses. So that restructuring came with a cost. But kind of fast forward a little bit further, and the company reported an 11% rise in revenue and 32 billion to a total of 32 billion in its second quarter compared to the previous year. So those costs are they're below the line, I think, Jim. But either way, they definitely have shaken things up.
Wow. Well, it's interesting to look at, say, with Meta, how laying off 21,000 employees, incurring a massive amount of cost for the redundancies, then saw an increase in revenue, which you think is counter. So it would be an interesting study with Meta to see which of their structuring and of which of the increase in revenue could be attributed to innovation. That would be an interesting follow-up.
Well, for sure. And when you think about a restructuring activity like this, you don't know, the products that were in the pipeline, so to speak, that may have given rise to this revenue. The true test is over time, and the impact of the reduction of that work. The important thing is, what did they do with that savings? How are they investing it? And how are they focusing the development? And if they're doing those things, you'll continue to see a rise in revenue.
Right. So as you've got, say, Meta, I'm sure they couldn't just lay off 21,000 employees without looking at what those individuals were doing, what processes were they involved in. As other organizations that don't have the deep cash pockets that Meta does, they might be listening to this, understanding like, well, that's great, but I don't have 210 employees, let alone 21,000 to let go. How can companies avoid spreading resources too thin in innovation?
Well, we've touched on it in some of the other questions, and really it's by really focusing on those best opportunities and having the discipline to kill or to push out away any effort on ideas that are not prioritized. And I've seen this in organizations where they have a hard time saying no. The development resource gets stretched too thin. They're working on too many projects, and things kind of slow in the development process, and really focusing on the best ideas, keeping resources focused on those ideas helps speed the process and maximizes the impact of your investment.
And so we've heard some things like focus, concentration, that spreading too thin essentially is the opposite of that, very obtuse, which is low focus, dilution. So what you're saying is the other way around, is make sure to listen, have people, give them a chance to specialize and to focus and become perhaps subject matter experts in an area of innovation where they want to experiment. Certainly, I think we would all say spending 8 hours focused on an innovation opportunity is going to allow more focus, more concentration than 8 1-hour separate creative projects. And I think that that's something that I think everybody can learn from being able to focus and concentrate on stuff like that. In our multitasking world, I know I've got 3 screens and a tablet and a phone up pretty much all the time. And that certainly, as I'm now thinking about it, does not make me very innovative. Can you talk about, because you'd also mentioned viable products, we've talked about MVP, minimum viable product. Can you talk about the importance of a minimum viable product in innovation?
Well, and we did talk about minimum viable product a little bit earlier, but just to emphasize the point that it's really about time to value and getting products into the market fast. And along with minimum viable product comes fail fast, which we talked about as well. But these are important ideas, and they're worth emphasizing. That with the minimum viable product, then you're also more nimble, right? Where you're taking in the next set of ideas that you're going to deploy to your minimum viable product. So you're enhancing it, and you're able to respond faster in the case of marketplace changes. So they're very good practices in terms of making sure you're getting the best impact from your development, innovation, investment.
Yeah. So Steve, earlier we were talking about cross-functional collaboration, and how can we drive innovation? How can efficiencies help different groups within an organization, especially technology companies, work together? There's so much competition even within an organization. A lot of these technology companies that we'll work with are on a high growth trajectory, so it's cash scarce, but it's also internally competitive. Can you talk about how perhaps efficiency in resource allocation can encourage cross-functional collaboration rather than perhaps hinder it, which would be the common thought?
Well, in my experience, and I used this example a little bit earlier, but in my experience, that when you're challenged with how do I get things done, you don't know how you're going to make that improvement, then you're more open to collaborating and getting ideas from anywhere. And so really then, in my past, I've worked at companies, they call them stretch goals, for example. And stretch goals were intended to be just a bit more challenging than the things you knew you could do. They required you to think outside the box, and they required a different way of approaching the problem. And then as I think about from an efficiency and resource allocation, again, keeping a focus on the most critical priorities, giving goals or stretch targets where that it encourages that looking out from anywhere, not invented here, you hear about sometimes, but those are things that ways to improve the collaboration and people continuing to learn and seek out new information.
Right. Well, so Steve, one final question. We've talked about a lot of the giants, the titans within the technology space. And, we've also talked about a lot of our clients are really in the mid-market. So it's hard sometimes for a mid-market organization, even when rapidly growing, listen to the likes of what IBM or Amazon or Google might be doing and saying, this doesn't apply to me. How do real-world examples from these tech leaders illustrate principles of efficiency-driven innovation, and maybe talk about how does this apply to, say, a smaller organization?
Well, we've seen companies like Amazon, Toyota, Google, IBM, they've all successfully applied efficiency and cost saving and process streamlining and making sure resource allocation is focused to drive innovation and growth. Their practices demonstrate how efficiency acts as a catalyst for creativity and experimentation. As we look broadly across our customers and the marketplace, we've talked an awful lot about waste elimination and focusing on customer value, really, because these behaviors really can help drive better results from innovation. And I would say, Jim, if any of our listeners are interested in improving their ability to identify and eliminate waste, or help optimize processes, reach out. We're here to help.
We love what we do. So thank you all for joining and tuning in to this podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this series on the year of efficiency and that you're inspired to implement some of these strategies within your own organization to create greater efficiency. As always, you can visit cbh.com/technology for any of the information we've mentioned today or on previous podcasts. And you can find our contact information in the show notes of wherever you're listening. Thanks again.